Time to start. Red light on my... Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Price. I'm the Executive Director for the South Carolina School Boards Association, and I wanted to welcome you all to our public comment meeting this evening regarding the superintendent search for Dorchester 2 School District. School Boards Association is very pleased and honored to be a part of this process. It's going to be an exciting time, I believe, for the district and moving forward and looking towards the future, for leadership with the future. We've been doing this, the association has been doing superintendent searches for about 15 plus years. And so we bring a lot of experience to this process. There's essentially a three-person team, including myself, but we have Judy LeGrand in our office, as well as Dr. Jean Moore, who's a retired superintendent who works with us as a consultant on superintendent searches. Superintendent search it's an interesting process. It's usually typically about a 3 to 6 month process, depending on what the board wants to do. And, you know, we go to the board, and it's a tailored type of system where we have sort of a basic process that we go and sit down with the board and talk to them about, you know, the timeline is really sort of the main thing that the board has to focus on, and whether they want to have focus groups and community surveys and the like. And I will tell you that the Dorchester 2 board is very interested in getting community input for this search and to help them as they look at the candidates later in the process. The information that they get from the community meetings tonight, as well as focus groups that they have been doing with the district personnel and next week with some of the school personnel and teachers, as well as the information from the survey. And I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to take the survey or not, but I encourage you to do so, because again, the information from that will help the board as they look at the candidates and sort of match what they're hearing from the community as they look at the qualifications that each of the candidates bring to the table. At the end of the day, it is the board's decision on who they hire as the next superintendent, so I want to make sure I was clear about that. But again, what they pull in as input from the community is something that will help guide them as they move forward in that process. So the first phase of a typical search is a meeting with the board to talk about all these things and the logistics, and we've already had that initial meeting with the board. And then we work with the board through the process that we're engaging in tonight and this week, and I think some next week and in the survey, to help the board basically assess the priorities in relation to the needs of the district and the qualities that they want in the next superintendent. So we help the board in identifying the perceived needs and the desires of the district with professional attributes, abilities, skills that are most desired in the next superintendent. And these activities will provide board members with the opportunity to rank characteristics, professional experiences, and personal qualities they believe should be used in reviewing the applications as they come in. And the applications process has already opened up, and I believe the deadline for receiving applications is going to be February 14th. And I think we anticipate getting a lot of good interest. You know, Summerville is a wonderful community, and I think that we should all anticipate getting a lot of interest from not only in South Carolina and the Southeast, but probably nationally. So the board has said they want to throw a wide net in what they're looking for. But the board can utilize the results from the focus groups like tonight and the online survey to help them identify the characteristics and qualities that they want in their next superintendent. And again, like I said, while this is really only advisory to the board, the survey does provide them with a snapshot, if you will, of community and staff perceptions and the desired attributes for the candidates. Phase 3, which has already begun, involves state and national advertising and recruitment, and also getting the application procedures in place. SCSBA developed an electronic brochure that we have made available announcing the vacancy and describing the district and giving the various attributes of the district and the position, and make that application and announcement available not only to state organizations but national organizations that we work with in superintendent searches in order to throw that wide net that we talked about. The vacancy is also announced to all superintendents in South Carolina and assistant superintendents and other key individuals in the state and top administrators in other states through our counterparts in other states. There are school boards associations in every state in the country, and so we work through them to set that network up for trying to pull candidates in also. Applications that come in are kept by us, and they're kept confidential. And it stays that way until we get to but they are made available to the board, but we keep the applications confidential, and that stays that way until we get to the finalist process. When the applications come in, we interview every candidate as the application comes in, and I believe the board had actually asked for us to do little video snippets of each of the candidates too, which is something that we've not done before, but that's something that we certainly can and will do. So as the applications come in to us, we interview each candidate and do background checks, not deep background checks yet. We do that when we get to the finalist stage. But you'd be surprised at how much you can find out there when you just do internet checks. But the School Boards Association is also, the logistical part of a search process can be mind-numbing, so that's something that we do. And that includes setting up semifinalist interviews as well as finalist interviews. And what we'll do is we'll go through the applications that come in. Let's just say we get 30 applications, and we'll go through those applications, and we will, with our consultant, we'll sit down and look at the characteristics that the board has said they're looking for, and that includes information from the surveys. And we identify probably upwards of 9 candidates that we feel meet those recommendations. And we'll bring those, and they're semifinalists, and we'll bring those to the board, and we'll meet with the board. But the board's going to have access to all 30 applications. So they'll look at that list, and they'll ask us, well, why did you include so-and-so? And we'll talk to them about so-and-so. And they'll have the list of all the applicants, and they might look at that and say, well, why didn't you include so-and-so? And they may decide they want to put that person on the list. So the board has complete control of who they eventually interview for semifinalists. And I believe we're looking at the week of February 21st is when we'll go and meet and provide that pool of candidates. Hey, good evening. When we provide that pool of candidates to the board. And as I said, we'll go through those candidates and they'll select their semifinalists. And some boards have 5 semifinalists, some have upwards of 12. It just depends on how many candidates they have and how many they're interested in. But again, it's their selection on who they want to talk to. We then have, I think, arranged for the week of March 15th, semifinalist interviews and with the board. And again, that will be confidential. That will occur in executive session. And the reason for that is that enables us to be able to draw the best candidates in if they know that the process will maintain confidentiality until it gets to the point where they're finalists. They're listed as finalists and the information is made public so that the public can examine the candidates. When the board goes through the semifinalist interviews, sometimes they do 3 a night for 3 nights during a week. It just depends on how they have that set up. So it's kind of a grueling process. But we help them with questions. They bring questions to the table, and each candidate gets asked these questions in the interview process. Again, these are semifinalists. So they'll then deliberate following that meeting. Sometimes they do it that night while it's all fresh. Sometimes they're worn out, and the board decides they're going to come back maybe the next week to deliberate and pick their finalists. So what we then look for would be for the board to give us at least 3 names that they view as their finalists. And at that point, we'll contact the names that they select and say, the board has selected you as a finalist, are you ready to move forward? And they'll say yes or no, and then if they say yes, then we'll make those names available to the public. And then once that occurs, sometimes the boards, and I don't know this board has decided yet, but sometimes they do site visits, or they'll go visit the districts wherever the finalist currently is working. Sometimes they, and I believe the board plans to have days in the district where each finalist will come in and spend a day in the district meeting staff, touring some of the schools. I don't think probably take 3 days to tour all the schools in Dorchester too, but there will be a day in the district for each of the finalists. And let's just say there's 3 of them. So that's one person comes in, spends a day meeting people, and then at the end of the day, I think there's discussion of there being sort of a community meet and greet, a little small reception, and then at that point, following that, the candidate then goes in for a final interview. So that'll happen for each of the candidates. And then following that, the board comes back together to deliberate and hopefully make a decision on who the next superintendent's going to be. We're looking at the week of April 4th for finalist interviews, and then looking at April 11th as the date for the announcement. And although it's still to be determined, it's most likely it would be a July 1 start date. That's typical, but I don't think the board has determined quite just yet when that start date would be. So that is the process in a nutshell. Does anybody have any, before we get to the question about, that I want to get your input in, does anybody have any questions about the process in general? Yes, ma'am. She asked a question about whether the board decides, and that's what I said earlier. Yes, it's ultimately under state statute, the board is responsible for hiring the superintendent, so they make that decision. Well, the board develops that list. I mean, we work with the board to develop a list of criteria that they're looking for. And again, they'll use the information they get from this meeting tonight, the other one that's at Fort Dorchester, as well as the survey information. So they'll use that information that they pull in to develop the criteria that they're looking for. Do you have like process questions? If you've got characteristics, we're going to get to that in just a second. Okay. Any other questions? So at this time, I think we're going to stop the live stream because I wanted the folks